Okay, and welcome everybody. It is Wednesday, May 29th. It's a beautiful day here in Connecticut. And this is our summit that I'm calling Cultivating Peace and Resolving Conflict. I started this, what is now a monthly habit, and I'm sure I'll be doing it again next month. So you'll be hearing from me about that. But I started this in March because I noticed on the calendar that March 8th, which at that time was a few days away, is and was International Women's Day. And as many of you know, from different discussion groups I participate in and that kind of thing, I uh, I feel blessed to often find myself surrounded by brilliant women. Often I'm the only guy in the crowd, 20, whether it's 20 or 10 or 6, whatever the case may be. So it seemed like a very logical move to host a 2-hour conversation honoring International Women's Day. So we had 11 great speakers from countries around the world, and that worked out very, very well. And then recently I discovered I guess you'd call him a money coach, uh, uh, um, Mel Abraham, and I'd been sitting in on some of his discussion groups as well. And he mentioned that April was Financial Literacy Month, and so I said, well, that would be a great topic for our next one for the month of April. And this was sneaking up. I was a little too late to once again honor the ladies in my life with a Mother's Day theme or something like that. But for a couple of months, I've been working with a wonderful assistant, a colleague based in the UK, Crystal. And Crystal said, well, why don't you do something on peace? And I thought, what a great idea. I do know a number of people who really focused on that topic. And I think if I called it creating peace and resolving conflict, it would speak to many different aspects in our lives. And it's interesting being a journalist. I have a lot of friends, especially because I have a lot of friends in the personal development space who are coaches, whether they're health coaches or fitness coaches or financial coaches or life coaches. And a number of them say, don't listen to the news, absolutely no news in your life. It's too stressful. It's a source of anxiety. It's never any good anyway. It's calculated, to get the ratings, sell the commercials and all that. And there's a lot of truth to all of that, of course. And there is a lot going on in the world these days, as we all know, no matter how closely we listen to the news or not. But I thought I'd always remember the Mahatma Gandhi quote, and I don't know if I was surfing the net today and somebody said, well, I don't know if Mahatma Gandhi really said it or if it was extrapolated for something he wrote, but that, change starts with us, be the change. And so, I've been collaborating with Brent and Dia for years now, and Brent will kick us off with a great discussion, and he'll tell you how there really is room for optimism in the world, and I'm just very excited about that. And all of our speakers have great ideas to share, whether it's in the relating to the workplace or the home or the planet. So why don't we just kick it right off? And I know I was a little unfair because I asked people to speak for about 10 minutes. It's hard to contain lots of brilliant thoughts into just 10 minutes, but I thought we could do it that way and then have 10 minutes for questions and answers from everyone following each presentation. And usually somebody who's a host of an event like this will say, don't be in the chat. Okay, if you have a question, get in the chat. But I really encourage you all to participate in the chat. You might want to get to know one another, especially after you hear one of the speakers, each of the speakers, or somebody commenting relating to what one of the speakers is saying. So I know that's a little multitasking. Usually people say multitasking doesn't work, but I found that based on the past 2 summits, it can be very good, and a lot of friendships have been established. I met with my friend Marsha Martin, who's a great coach. Happens to be visiting my town. I live in Stamford, Connecticut, and she said that she struck up a really nice friendship with actually my friend Dia, who's with us. Mentioned, put me in touch with another financial writer, Jackie Woodside, and so Jackie participated in the Financial Literacy Month thing. And so, friendships and collaboration can start this way. But so that's sort of the whole idea. But Brent, why don't you kick us off? Brent is quite a genius when it comes to the world of technology, and is also a great visionary who many, many years ago had the notion that we can come together in peace through cyberspace, which was, I'm sure, like provocative, out of the, what do they call it? Breaking the envelope or something like that idea. But Dia and Brent and their collaborators have taken things to another level, and look forward to hearing all about that. So, Brent Hunter, why don't you take it away, sir?
Hey, thank you so much, Tom, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here today when there's so many other things that we could be doing. So thank you for being here. Before I talk about the World Community Network, I thought it'd be helpful to just share a little bit about my background because it helps inform the work that I do today. I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional, conflict-ridden family, I think like many of us. My mother was Muslim, my father was Jewish, and we were raised as Christians. And as if that wasn't confusing enough, my father was also interested in Buddhism and transcendental meditation. Back then, when I was a child, it was all very confusing. But I've since spent, a good portion of my life thinking about what is the meaning of life, what are religions all about, and how can we achieve a sense of peace in our lives. So and because of my father's interests, I actually learned how to do transcendental meditation. He brought us, me and my two sisters, and I learned how to do transcendental meditation when I was 12, and I've been meditating ever since. So if I fast forward from there up until about 30 years ago, in 1994, as Tom mentioned, I started the first intentionally global online community. It was called The Park. And the vision for the park was to create a unified world community in cyberspace. I didn't know it at the time, but apparently I was many years ahead of my time, and it was very, very challenging experience to try to keep that running. I kept the site running for several years. Unfortunately, we got caught up in the dot-com craze and had to shut down. But by the time we shut down, we had about 700,000 members around the world, all of who resonated with this idea of creating a better world, starting in cyberspace. Um, the experience of the park and all of the many, many challenges actually was, I felt like I was in the heat of the fire, so to speak. And it was because of that experience that led me to write a book, which is called The Rainbow Bridge, Bridge to Inner Peace and to World Peace. And that book is actually the common ground in all of the world's major wisdom traditions. And I could never have written it unless I actually went through those raging fires in very, very challenging times. So now if we fast forward to today, as Tom has already mentioned, we are running an operation now called the World Community Network. In many ways, it's the next generation of the park online community. But it basically starts with a really interesting idea, and that is that we can create any reality on television in the movies. Well, we can do the same thing in cyberspace. We can create any reality in cyberspace. So this is a really, I don't think this idea has been leveraged very much. So what we're doing after many years and after many lessons learned, not only back then, but also lessons learned around all of the existing social media and social networking platforms and the issues that they're creating, we've created an alternative, which is a purpose-driven, positively oriented online community with a vision of bringing everyone together and creating a blueprint for a better world, a world that works for everyone, creating that in cyberspace and then extending it out. But we start in cyberspace where it's relatively easy to do these sorts of things, to create new realities. So that is the vision of the World Community Network. We start without getting into all the details about it, but we do have a 5-phase operating model, and we start with phase one, which is creating a new social media platform with very, very innovative use of artificial intelligence. So we've built most of that. It's undergoing beta testing right now. And then another really important component of the World Community Network is to create or is to produce and acquire uplifting and inspiring short form videos that help people be inspired and excited about the future as opposed to being afraid of it. As Tom already mentioned, if you turn on the major mainstream media, there's no shortage of terrible news, right? But there's miracles that are happening every single day, day after day, and we don't hear about them. And when we do hear about them, it's very uplifting and very inspiring. So that's another one of our primary focus areas is to actually produce these videos. And we have a team of about 80 people on 6 continents, including Emmy award-winning professionals and industry leaders. Tom is part of the team. Dia here is obviously a very important part of the team. And we have this really amazing team of people that have come together around this idea that we can literally create a new world. And we come together in cyberspace focused on common ground. And the common ground that we're focusing on is the desire to live in a peaceful, abundant world. And every time I've asked that question to people, not surprisingly in some ways, but everyone says, well, of course I want to live in a peaceful, abundant world. So that's good. That's common ground that we all agree on. So this is something that we can come together and focus on this common ground and take collective actions together. So that's a little bit about the World Community Network. I would probably be incomplete if I didn't give some what I think important nuggets of wisdom, if you will, about cultivating peace and resolving conflict. So just a couple comments, and that is also, as Tom mentioned, peace begins within each person, and that is the single most important thing that any one of us can do to help make the world a better place. Is to focus on ourselves, to figure out who we are, what kind of baggage we have, and we all have baggage, we all have egos, we all have issues, and all of that. So the great, to the extent that we can work on ourselves to create peace inside of ourselves, that will then automatically make the world a better place for all the people that are immediately around us, and then it just extends as a major ripple. So everything begins with individual peace,
Yeah, I'm gonna try
looking within.
it's, and you can tell me if my camera needs,
Excellent.
can you
Excellent. Thank
mute
you,
me?
Brent. Hold on one second.
Sure.
Can you mute
Um,
me?
hold on one second. Yeah, sorry, Victoria. Okay, great. Yeah, please continue. Sorry about that, Brent.
Okay. Um, so just everything begins with yourself when we're talking about peace, right? That's just like so important. And then the other thing is focusing on common ground is really important. And an example that I use is I actually have somebody that's pretty close to me, and they have some beliefs, political beliefs, which are very difficult for me. And so I just, after several months or maybe even longer, I just decided, well, I'm just going to focus on what's common between us, and I'm just going to forget about everything else. And when I did that, of course, all the conflict just went away. And I know that some of the background information and beliefs are still there, but it allows me to have a peaceful, um, conflict-free relationship with this person. So that's just an example. So the importance of focusing on common ground will not only cultivate peace, but also helps to resolve conflict. So those are the major points that I wanted to bring up today, and I'll just open it up for any questions or comments or discussion that anyone wants to have.
I appreciate that, no, Brent. Really thought provoking and definitely mind expanding. I love that. So thank you. And I encourage. And how can people learn more about the World Community Network?
Oh, thank you. Yes, the website is worldcommunitynetwork.org. And because of our social media platform is in beta test mode right now, so it's not available to the public, but there is a dialog box that pops up. And if you'd like to have access to our social media platform, just put your name and email address in there, and and we'll get you the URL that you can actually access the system and take a look at it and participate. So yes, I definitely welcome everyone to come join us, because it's not about a small number of people that are coming together. I mean, that can start a fire, but it's all about all of us coming together in this kind of desire for a better world where everyone can thrive.
Uh, Beautiful. No, I love that. Love that. No, I'm honored to be part of what you and Dia have organized there. It's really amazing. So thank you. Great. So then, anybody have any questions for Brent about what he shared with us? Feel free to jump right in. I'm not very good at following the chat. Uh-huh.
Well, it's just beautiful, but it's almost like, okay, so do you ever have anybody that's against world peace? Like, oh no, we don't want to do that shit. It's like, I mean, it's just a beautiful idea, but it's just, I just love listening to you, just putting it out there. Like, of course, we're just gonna, create world peace, and everybody's gonna join, and we'll just resolve all conflicts with everybody, and it's gonna be wonderful. So, I mean, that's my perspective on what I'd like to see happen, and I just love the energy you bring to the party, where there's almost like an forced energy. It's like not even a question. We just get everybody to join, and there's world peace.
Well, I remember
Yeah.
when, yeah, no, definitely, Brent, definitely want to hear you speak about that. I'm, Michael, when you mentioned that, I'm reminded of that film that came out, what, 10 or 15 years ago, What the Bleep Do We Know? And they had, I forget who the expert on transcendental meditation was, but again, they talk about when people meditate in mass, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. Brent, do you know what I'm talking about there?
100%. It's like the tipping point, right? Or the hundredth monkey effect, where if enough people come together, it becomes reality. So, um, yeah. So, we're not under any illusion that this is easy or simple. It's a lot of hard work. However, what really inspires me is that the idea is actually simple, and it's logical, and it makes sense. So we start there, and we know that since we live in a world of infinite possibilities, if we start there, there's no guarantee we're going to get there, but if we start there, then we're taking the first steps. We're taking the steps to actually help move things in that positive direction. And the other thing that inspires me is when I look around the world, I don't see any other plans like this to help make the world a better place. And so that just is okay. Well, we need to just keep doing what we're doing with the World Community Network. That we have a very unique vision. We have very unique technology, which we've already built, and I've only mentioned a teeny bit of how the technology is actually, plays a role of almost turning it into magic. I think it was Arthur C. Clarke that said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And so we're building some of that really amazing technology. But it all starts with a common ground and people coming together.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I saw another one of my dear friends joined us. I didn't know you were even registered, so I'm glad you're here. Brian Mattamore, you're always thinking about the future. What are your thoughts about this subject?
Well, I have I think a radically different point of view than probably everybody on the call. I hope it's not disconcerting to everyone, but I feel strongly that we all have to do our best to work towards world peace. I think we can all agree on that. But I have also a spiritual perspective that this physical reality was created for learning. It's the greatest learning school that's ever been created, but that, and this is the radical point of view, that the world, from my odd perspective here, was not created for world peace. It was created for learning, and all these terrible things that happened are part of soul's journey to grow into greater awareness. And so, yes, I think we should all be doing everything we can to make the world a better place, but also recognize that the purpose of this physical world is for learning, and sometimes that learning is a very negative situation.
Yeah, and actually, Brian, thank you for that perspective. I 100% agree with you. One of my books is about knowledge management, and a key component of knowledge management is all about learning. And so learning, absolutely, I think that is one of the reasons why we're here. And from my perspective, we're learning that we do not live or have to live in a world filled with suffering, that it is indeed possible to live in a peaceful world. And I think that's what we're learning. And the idea of creating this world or starting to create this kind of nucleus of a new world in cyberspace, that is a learning. That is something that we can learn that like, wow, that's interesting. We can do that with TVs and movies. I never thought that we could do that with cyberspace. So that's another kind of learning. So yeah, so I don't disagree with you. I think it is about learning. I'm just focused on what learnings are we actually, what things are we actually learning, and is it the things that we're learning designed to help create a better world for every single person on the planet?
Beautiful. Well said. Well said. Well, thank you, Brent. I know we could I mean, given the topic, we could talk for hours, I'm sure. But and we can do that on the World Community Network platform as well. So maybe you could put some more information about that in the chat so that people can register and follow up. And
Absolutely, great idea.
but I really appreciate your being with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So like to bring up another dear friend. You're all dear friends, but Cynthia Welbrock. Let me see here one second. Negotiate every speaking of technology here. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, hey Cynthia, how are you?
I'm great, Tom. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you could join us. Yeah, Cynthia and I met in a group kind of in cyberspace a few years ago, the Lewis Howes community, who's one of the great coaches I've enjoyed learning from. Speaking of learning, and Cynthia allowed me and a couple other people in our little group that we put together to kind of journey with her as she was putting together workshops on a very important subject. Um, Taking action and acquiring the knowledge to eliminate toxic workplaces. And, that's certainly an important goal and something I'm sure we all can get behind. And I thought that, with our topic of the day, cultivating peace and resolving conflict, that Cynthia would be a perfect person to share with us a little bit. So Cynthia is an attorney based in Colorado, and I'm sure you can tell us a little bit more, but we'd love to hear what your thoughts are today.
Oh, sure. Okay, I just set a clock for 10 minutes so I don't talk too long.
No problem.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Cynthia Welbrock. I live in Denver, Colorado, originally from Long Island, New York. I have been an attorney for over 27 years, and I specialize in employment law. So I handle issues like harassment, discrimination, wrongful termination, unpaid wages, severance agreements, all kinds of things related to employment law. And back in 2008, and by the way, I represent both employers and employees. Around 2008, during the recession, I noticed this huge uptick in calls from people telling me that these horrible things were happening in their companies, like bosses screaming at them, coworkers backstabbing them, just a lot of really awful behaviors that weren't necessarily illegal. And so there wasn't anything I could do about it, but people would call and say, I think I'm working in a hostile work environment. And most people don't really know what that means. A hostile work environment, and a lawful one, is one where you're targeted because of your membership in a protected class. So that would be things such as your race, your gender, national origin, religion, disability, veteran status, pregnancy, and in Colorado, we cover sexual orientation. So if you're being picked on, targeted, harmed in some way because of your membership in a protected class, yes, that's actionable. But what I was finding is, yeah, the boss yells at them, but they yell at everybody, men and women, black and white. So it's not discrimination. And it's not an unlawful hostile environment. It certainly is hostile. I could start screaming at you all now, and that would be hostile towards you, but it's not illegal. And so I just thought, you know what? I want to get out in front of this problem. And I created a training program called Creating a Respectful Workplace. And it addresses all kinds of behavior that happen in companies that, while not illegal, cause employees to feel, number one, disrespected. They're stressed out. Let's face it, stressed out employees don't do as good a job. They're sick more often, so there's lower productivity. They don't like their job, so there's more turnover. And as you know, turnover is expensive to companies. And so there's lower profits. So everybody suffers when the environment is toxic. So I created this program to try and help companies have their people become more emotionally aware of how their behavior impacts other people. Because it's kind of like if you go to a beautiful crystal mountain lake and you walk it and waist high, and you can still see the rocks on the bottom and the fish swimming around. And you go and you take a drink of water. It just tastes beautiful. And then you see on the other side of the lake, a dump truck comes and dumps like gallons of raw sewage into the lake. It's ruined the whole lake. It might only be 5 gallons of sewage, but you're not going to drink from it anymore. It's going to make you sick, and you're not going to want to be there anymore. So it's the same thing in a work environment where even if it's just one person that is acting like a bully or being abusive, that can cause bad workplaces. So I've created this program, and why do you think it's important? The things that I have come out with is, you know, if people are working in a hostile environment, not necessarily an unlawful one, it reduces their quality of life, not just for themselves, but for their coworkers. It increases their stress. Their quality of work performance goes down. The quality of customer service satisfaction goes down. So everybody loses. And I did some research, and the Chicago School of Psychology issued a report once that said 40% of employees in the US report that they regularly experience work-related stress, and say that work is the biggest source of stress in their life. Their jobs, where they spend most of their waking hours. And so I created this program to help reduce that. And employees have all sorts of physical illnesses as a result of being in a stressful environment. They get high blood pressure, anxiety, depression, ulcers, cancer, heart attacks, heart palpitations, excessive use of drugs and alcohol. And then it affects their family, and it affects their personal life because they bring it home and they kick the dog or they yell at their kids. And so there's all kinds of disrespectful conduct that happen in the workplace that's not illegal, like gossiping, shaming somebody for wanting to have their boundaries respected, violating somebody's physical space. I once had a case where this girl called me, her boss would edit while looking at her computer screen, and he'd lean over her and his face would be right here. She'd feel his breath on the side of her face. And one day she was wearing a top that was maybe cut down like to here, which was very modest if you're looking at eye level, but this guy's looking down. And she was just mortified, like, oh my God, he's looking down my blouse. And he didn't mean to be pervy. He wasn't trying to be, but that was the effect that it had. And so I try to get people to be aware of how their conduct affects other people. And then, when people are working in a disrespectful, stressful work environment, it makes them want to quit, doesn't make them loyal. They don't work as hard. They lose their confidence in themselves. And, it just undermines their confidence and their self-esteem. So one thing that I do try to teach on, and I don't know if I'm allowed to share my screen. Nope, it's disabled. If you can enable share screening. I also teach about emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence it's the ability to identify your own emotions and those of others. Oh, I see Patsy's off emotional intelligence. So here's just a little thing. So these are all different aspects of emotional intelligence: social skills, empathy, motivation, self-reporting. And it's the awareness of your own emotions and those of others, the ability to harness emotions and apply them to tasks like thinking and problem solving, the ability to regulate your emotions and to know how your emotions are impacting other person's emotions. And there's 4 core skills. There's personal competence of when you're aware of your own emotions and you manage them, and then there's social competence, and that's the ability to pick up on others' moods and emotions and use that awareness to manage interactions. And so a lot of times what I find people say, well, so-and-so didn't tell me that they were upset with what I said or did, so how was I to know? Well, I'm sorry, but a lot of times people don't respond the way you think that they should. A lot of victims of sexual harassment in the workplace don't say a thing. They just kind of get quiet. And physical responses like they'll leave the room or they turn away, or facial expressions indicating discomfort or silence. You know, just because somebody doesn't say anything doesn't mean that they were okay with it. So that's one of the things that I try and teach people, is that you need to develop your emotional intelligence so you know how your behavior, your words and actions are impacting other people. And, you know, there's always going to be conflict in a workplace. I mean, people, we're human beings and we don't all think the same way. We come from very different backgrounds, and what might trigger one person wouldn't trigger another person. But if you feel that you've been the victim of disrespectful conduct in the workplace, how comfortable are you really to approach that person about it? Probably not very at all. And so I train people on how to address conflict if somebody has said something and was disrespectful to them, such as your boss yelled at you in the lunchroom because you didn't get a project done on time, or somebody took credit for a project that you actually came up with the idea. The first thing that I teach people is describe the behavior that you feel was out of line, express how it made you feel and the impact that it had on you. Be clear on your boundaries, because a lot of people aren't clear on what their boundaries are and what you need specifically to change, and then wait for the other person to respond. Now, how many people are super comfortable when somebody comes up to them and says, you hurt my feelings, or I thought you were rude in that meeting, you spoke over me, you took credit? I mean, how many people are comfortable when people come up to you and say stuff like that? Nobody. But what you have to realize is it took a lot of courage for that person to come up to you and say how they felt about what you said and did. And so you need to take a deep breath and realize that, okay, this is a conflict, this is a problem, but this person's being very brave right now by coming to me, and I need to give them the respect of at least listening. I may not agree with them, but you can still acknowledge that how they felt. And so, first of all, listen intently. Don't be defensive. Let them finish what they have to say. And then apologize if you're in the wrong, and thank them for the courage that they had to share that with you, and make a commitment to act differently in the future. It may not be something that you might walk away saying, God, Mary was really was too sensitive. Don't ever say that to her. Don't shame anybody for having their feelings, because that doesn't resolve the conflict. That just makes it worse. And make a commitment to act differently in the future, because it's one thing, just anybody can say I'm sorry, but I'm sorry is a dime a dozen. It's almost worthless. But if you make a commitment to not do that again, then that lets that other person feel more safe in the workplace. And, you know, look, I do this training all the time, and I tell people, you know, just because you went through this doesn't mean everything's going to be. By the way, this was a 3-hour program that I condensed into 10 minutes. So there's a lot more to it, okay? But I tell people it's not always going to be rainbows and unicorns. People are going to disagree. They are going to get their feelings hurt. But the important part is develop self-awareness, develop personal awareness and personal accountability, and then make a commitment to become a better person, especially at work. Because let's face it, most of our waking hours are at the job. Things are a little different now with so much remote work. And I've seen a lot of disrespectful things happening on Zoom calls, and I hear it from my clients. One time, my client was conducting a Zoom call for her team, and somebody didn't turn off their video, and they lit a joint during the meeting, and they didn't realize their video was on because they were stoned, obviously. On another occasion, somebody showed up and was sitting at the pool just in his bathing trunks and was shirtless, and he had his laptop here, so everyone has to see his naked chest. And like the boss had to say, "Would you please go put a shirt on?" Like, be respectful of other people. We don't need to see stuff like that. So I think the core lesson that I try to implore on people when I do this training is become as self-aware as you can. And then that will help you be more respectful of others when you're interacting with them. That's what I got. Any questions?
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Cynthia. How can people learn more about your programs and so on?
Oh, okay. Well, I have a website. It's Respectful Workplace Training, singular.com. That's my website. And you can learn more about the other programs that I have. But creating a respectful workplace is like my signature program, and it's the one I feel most passionate about.
Great, great. Thank you. And I'm sure that this is a topic that each of us can take, individual action on. That like that whole Mahatma Gandhi idea. If we want things to change in our environment, we can, what are some things just noticing or speaking up or not turning a blind eye to something or.
Well, that's the other thing. I had a case once where a young girl was working on a college campus in a lab. She was studying engineering, and she was the only woman in the lab. And one of the men in the lab, he was kind of older, he was a doctoral student, would tell really inappropriately sexual jokes and things. And sometimes he'd even watch porn on his laptop, and then he'd hold it up and say, "Hey guys, take a look at this." And she was very shy and very introverted. And she would just kind of get very quiet and sit, keep her head down and hope that she wouldn't be targeted. But of course, the guy did say some very disgusting things to her. And finally, she quit. And she quit, and she told her boss why. And her boss didn't want her to quit. He said, "Whoa, don't you quit. Let me put him on leave and we'll get to the bottom of this." And she's like, "No, all the other guys went along with him. Nobody said a word. And if he gets fired, they're all going to hate me." And so she didn't want to go back. When I investigated the case and I talked to each of I think there was 12 other students, male students that worked with her. And they were all like, "We never knew it bothered her because she never said anything." And I'm like, how would you feel if somebody spoke to your mother like that, or your girlfriend, or your sister? So much so much is allowed to happen in the world because good people don't say anything. And so so that's one of the things that I train on. If you see this type of conduct happening, and that person who was the victim of it is maybe too shy or introverted to say something, you need to say something to that person or go to HR and say, "This is what's going on. It may not be illegal, but I know it was inappropriate."
Mm,
So anyway, that's another aspect of, if because this girl felt so helpless
of course.
because 12 other guys went along with this jerk.
Yes.
And if even one person stood up to that guy, maybe it would have stopped.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's also being respectful to that person. You may not have perpetrated it, but if you didn't speak out about it, you're just as complicit.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. A good point. Good
and
point.
people are asking for the website, so I'll put that in there now.
Okay. Okay. Great. And we just have another minute or two, but does anyone have a question for Cynthia?
Well, I had a reaction.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, in my work, we do innovation consulting. And so, to innovate successfully, you need trust, right? Because you're going into areas you haven't been, you can look stupid, you're entertaining crazy ideas. And so I just would mention, I don't know how many of you know, about Project Aristotle. It was a study done about a dozen years ago by Google to try to understand high performing teams. And they spent a year, in a typical analytical way studying. And I thought they would discover that it was about cross functionality, to get a high performing team. You want people from all different levels and disciplines to contribute their ideas. But no, the single most important factor they discovered was psychological safety. That's what separated high performing teams from low performing teams. And so that's about trust and respect and all the things that Cynthia was mentioning.
Wow. Good point. Good point. Thank you. Good. Okay. Well, again, I encourage everybody to follow up with Cynthia. This is a very important subject also. Again, over the years, I've done stories about, anti-bullying in schools and that kind of thing. And again, I worked on one project a few years ago where somebody had invented an app that school districts could purchase, for all the teachers and so on, and the students, I think. And just to give some kind of anonymity. Some people would say, "Oh, well, I see bullying going on, but I don't want to get involved." And
Right.
the change does not come from that. It's sets the wrong tone, like you're saying. So certainly, it's very, very, very important. So, well, I appreciate your sharing your work with us, and I really encourage people to follow up with you. So, thank you, Cynthia.
Yes, feel free to send me an email if you have any questions. And if you know any companies that you think could use my services, just please send them my way. I can do virtual training and I can do it in person.
Sounds great. That sounds great. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much. I think we learned a lot here. So thanks for being part of the conversation. Appreciate it. So good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, of course. Pleasure. So let me just let's see, reset here. I did want to mention one thing to you all. Again, one of the things that we're doing here is uh, talking about getting our word out to the world. We want to make a difference. We want to share the subjects that we're passionate about. And next week, I'm going to be hosting a master class. I'm actually offering it 2 different times on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. And I just want to drop into the chat information about that. I don't want to take up too much time here, but I'll put that in there so that if you want to take a look, you can take a look. It's free and all that. I'd love to have you join me. But let me move right on with our show, on with the show, as they say. And coming right up is kind of a new friend of mine, but I feel like we've known each other for a lifetime because we are passionate about many of the same things. I love the brilliance that Michael Nitti shares through Facebook and in his books, of course. And as many of you know, I'm very active in the Tony Robbins community. I've learned a lot from Tony over the past 25 years. And Michael was a big part of kind of the growth of Tony's work throughout the world, literally. And also is a master of knowledge when it comes to mastery. And so there's so many things that Michael could talk about. To give him 10 minutes is kind of unfair here. But what kind of the way my mind was working when I was putting this event together for all of us was I remembered that Tony Robbins put out a video of what was happening when he was leading a seminar, I think it was in Hawaii, on the morning of 9/11, 2001. And, with I don't know how many hour delay, maybe a 6 hour delay from New York to Hawaii, the news broke of what had happened at Ground Zero, the World Trade Towers. And of course, everyone was very emotional. A lot of people are from New York and so on. But it's like, and then there turned out to be some other people in the room who said, well, I feel that what happened in New York this morning was inevitable. It was bound to happen because of what's, the United States is doing, and on and on and on. And it's like, oh my gosh. And so it was very interesting to see how Tony brought people together, like again, as Brent was saying, and Cynthia was saying as well. Can we, just through communication, can we resolve things a little bit here so we're not butting heads or worse in terms of violence and so on. So that reminded me of Michael, and also one of our friends here in the room today, Victoria Essner, is the first video podcast episode that I did. I'm going to be rolling that out, more of those episodes out soon. But I have posted the interview that I did with Victoria, and also the interview that I did with Michael. And he has so much wisdom. Like I said, 10 minutes is kind of unfair, but why don't you take it away, sir?
Hey, thank you, Tom. Privileged to be here. And yes, and I was privileged to be in Hawaii that day with Tony, watching it all unfold live. It was just incredible on a terrible, fateful day. But and listening to Cynthia, it's so important. I've been, in addition to, I actually supported Tony in starting his coaching program back in 1999, 2000. And but I was also director of operations. I was vice president of operations for Tony for a long time. So, and that was a 200-person company. And then I was in charge of operations for 4 or 5 other companies prior to that. And so it's always been about what Cynthia's talking about and, what's going on in the workplace. And that was just brilliant there. So yes, all very important, because if there is not a safe space, if there's not a camaraderie amongst people, no matter who they are, you're not going to produce the result you need to produce. So it's just very critical. So look, I thought what I do is just give everybody an example of a teaching I do. I'm privileged to have been a coach since 1981. I started with Werner Erhard in Est, if anybody knows who that is, and I became a leader there. And when I was a leader there, I got to meet. I was in Cleveland. I grew up in Cleveland, and I was part of a big community there, including an attorney from Canton, who, after knowing him for several years, I think it was the mid '80s when he went off and told me about this new guy called Tony Robbins, who was walking on fire and doing all these amazing things out in California. And he said, you got to come on and learn from Tony. You got to just, you're going to come out. Well, I don't get the walking on fire thing. I mean, I'm sure there's some value there somewhere, but okay. But so I just and it turns out Sam just went out there and started to become major in the organization, Sam Georges, and he eventually became CEO of Tony's company. And so in 1997, I hadn't even talked to him for a while. He called me one day and he left me a message. He goes, Nitty, give me a call. And I knew right away he was in San Diego. I was in Ohio. I knew I was moving to San Diego because I knew he was about to invite me to come out and work with Tony. And I did. And I was soon on the executive team. And then in 1999, I helped invent the coaching department. And it just grew and grew and grew, and it's just been wonderful. But I've also been a full-time coach, and I was Tony's top coach for many years. I'm just privileged. I mean, all the stuff he's done on TV and all of the world-famous celebrities, I got them all. So it's just been a privilege. So I want to share a little bit of something I teach everybody, and that is the fact that as human beings, there's only 2 ways that we show up in any given moment. There's plenty of different aspects to that, but there's only 2 ways of showing up. And for those of us on this call and people who are making a difference on the planet and really, make sure that we're playing at a higher level, we're able to bring this first way of showing up to the party maybe more often than the average person does. And that would be that we're living on purpose, okay? We're living on purpose with an intention to contribute, make a difference, and that's who we are. That's how we show up intentionally all the time. But unfortunately, since we're also human beings with a survival instinct, because we're all animals, we also tend to fall prey and fall back into the second way of showing up, which is we show up in reaction to whatever's going on around us. And unfortunately, most people show up in reaction a lot more often than they show up on purpose. And again, it's not because they haven't mastered it or anything like that. We're human beings. Something happens, we show up in reaction. Cynthia was talking about the young lady that wasn't happy about what was going on. She was showing up in reaction to the degree that she couldn't even tell anybody until she finally got the courage to purposely approach the boss and let him know. So that's what we're doing. And so I coach, everybody I coach, the first few sessions are going to be about causing them to understand why we fall into reaction as often as we do, because you're not going to ever defeat that. I've been doing this forever. I fall into reaction too. It's just that I catch myself falling in reaction. That's what's available to all of us. And when we own the fact that we have every ability to step back into intention and live on purpose toward whatever it is we live on purpose toward, that what we do well in life, our commitment to each other, bringing love in our heart to whatever's going on, we do that on purpose. But even when we do, we'll still fall back into reaction. So intention reaction is something that's very critical for all of us to understand about human dynamics. Okay. And when you do show up on purpose, there are some tools we use in order to do so. I've written a book on the 12 distinctions of mastery. And when you bring each of those 12 distinctions of mastery to the party, you can only do that on purpose. Even if you're in reaction, you can only bring those distinctions and everything you all are teaching here and what we all bring to the party, we bring it on purpose. And we do have the ability to do that throughout the other aspects of our life. And one of the ways we do that is I teach people about about archetypes. When you mirror and match and bring forth something that is, pretty much an archetype of a certain energy, you can then master that, and rather than just live at random, you can bring that forth. Now, there's different people will tell you there's different kinds of archetypes. Sometimes they'll tell you there's 4 archetypes, there's 8 archetypes, there's 14 archetypes. There was a book written, I think it was a good 20-some years ago, by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette called King, Warrior, Magician, and Lover. Okay. And it's geared basically about masculine archetypes, even though magician and lover are feminine energies. But a little bit about that is what I usually teach people right up front, because when you're showing up on purpose, well, what are you showing on purpose as? And obviously you want to bring excellence to the party. And so if you understand that you can bring these energies to the party, 2 of which are masculine, 2 of which are feminine, you can always monitor and bring that particular energy to the party at any given moment. And it's more powerful than simply just flapping your gums and you really mean to be on purpose, but you're not sure where you're going with it. And so, first of all, king energy, even though it's a masculine energy, the feminine can obviously align with that. It would be more of maybe queen energy, but it simply means that you own what you're doing. You absolutely own it in every moment. You're not arrogant about it. You're not full of yourself about it. You're just full of who you intend to be about it. And you show up as the king in your life, the queen in your life. And no matter what you're doing or how you're speaking, Cynthia and everybody's speaking here today, when you're speaking to a company, you're up in front, you're owning it. You're not just giving them information. The reason it's powerful is because you own who you're being, how you're showing up. It's not just the words coming out of your mouth. So it's important for anybody to know if you're going to live an intentional life is you want to own it first. Too many people are living in reaction, even if they're doing what they're doing professionally, because they're just, well, I don't want to show up as arrogant. I don't want to think I know everything or, whatever it might be. There's a little apologetic energy there or uncertainty, because even if you know it, you're shy in front of other people. So many reasons, but when you own it, when you absolutely just own it, okay? And when you were talking about, world peace, it wasn't like it was some pie in the sky thing. No, you own that you're going to be responsible for world peace. Not even a question. You just say it like, yeah, maybe tomorrow afternoon. So it's important to own it, okay? The next energy is warrior energy. And that's a masculine energy, but it can be embodied by the feminine as well. It will not probably show up as strongly or as pound on the table or, as some general, telling his troops what has to happen. But it's still an energy where you absolutely come from a full intention of making something happen, okay? You don't apologize for it. You just own it to the degree that when somebody's speaking, when you're speaking or somebody else is speaking from that place of warrior energy, it's like, I think they mean it. I think this person means it. Well, they do, because they're coming from now, it doesn't have to be a strong masculine pound on the table, listen to me energy. In fact, it's going to be more effective when it's married to a softer energy. It's just that the energy behind it is warrior energy, where you absolutely, bring it forth in a very powerful way. But it's more powerful, actually, and better and more of a chance of getting your message across when you bring it from a feminine perspective, when you bring it from the 3rd archetype, which is magician energy. And even though you can pretty much envision and understand how to bring forth king energy, be the owner, warrior energy where you absolutely just bring it fully strong on. And even the last one being lover, which is a feminine energy, you can imagine how to do that. But magician energy, that you can't really grasp because this magician energy. So when you can actually understand and acknowledge and expect magician energy to show up, that's powerful. But you have to expect it. You have to just understand that the universe is on your side and it's going to be flowing through you. But if you're not expecting that magic to show up, it won't. So it's an embracing something without seeing it. And that's a very important, this third energy of magician energy is critical because otherwise we just end up teaching what we know and we're doing it from a very strong position of knowing that we're right or that we really want to make a difference. But it's really magical when you just allow the universe to just keep sending you stuff and allow yourself to take advantage of every little coincidence that happens. Know that you're in the right place at the right time and just allow magic to flow through you. So that's a very important third archetype. And then lover is lover. And I don't think any of us would be as effective as we are, no matter what we're doing and who we are here today, without knowing that the energy that where we speak or how we show up in life is just going to be magnified, and our presence and how we show up and our effectiveness is going to be absolutely at a higher level when love is what's in our heart, when you absolutely just bring forth your loving energy. I mean, I can't go to the store. I mean, and this is everybody. I can't go to the store without just loving on everybody in the store. If I see the person stocking the shelves, if I even know where some, if I'm looking for something, I'm going to ask that person. I'm going to give them a chance to shine. I say, where is, my wife sent me with the shopping list. Where do I find this? She goes, aisle 3, about in the middle on the bottom. And I'll say something like, do you know where every item is here in this store? I mean, like, you see, and we all do that, but I mean, I do it on purpose from a loving energy, just even if it just causes him to feel a little bit better about himself for a moment or two. And we have the ability to do that every moment. All of us do. So when you embody these energies, no matter what you already know or what you're bringing to the party, it is the most spectacular thing to own yourself as the leader you are in every single moment, okay? And it's usually going to be when you're showing up within the presence of these 4 archetypes. And of course, other things that, we bring to the party because it's a lot more than that. But anyway, that's basically what I got to share. It's something I do with all my clients pretty much up front, where I teach them about intention, reaction. And of course, obviously with the intention that they understand that when they fall into reaction, they're not wrong or bad, or when am I going to get this stuff? I keep falling into, duh. Are you human? You will fall into reaction. You're an animal who will react. Okay, it's how long you stay there, how quickly you're able to bring yourself back into intention, and what is it you're intentional about.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, no, this is really helpful. I really encourage everyone to think more about what Michael shared with us, because it does, again, having seen that video of Tony Robbins in action, many years ago, it's a way to facilitate people coming together and bringing out the best in ourselves. And it's very, very, very profound. And I think you need to think about, digest this, because it's takes a little effort, I think, to digest this concept. But once you try it and so on, I think there's a lot of magic there, speaking of the magician. So thank you for sharing that. Can you take a minute to tell people about your books? Both of your books are excellent, by the way.
Well, I wrote a book called The Trophy Effect because back when I first became a coach and I worked with Werner Erhard, I got the concepts and everything, but I had just come out of a situation in life where I was suicidal and it was just terrible. And my best friend had run away with my wife. It wasn't pretty. And I was really in reaction. And but there's an engineering friend at the company I was the director of operations at. He told me about this thing called the S training. Now, at 30 years old, I never knew anything about self-help. I just knew nothing. I knew about how to run the company to some degree, but I was one of those people that Cynthia's talking about. I was hitting on the HR director because I could. I mean, there was, it didn't know. Didn't know there was any other way to show up. And so I ended up doing, the S training and all that kind of good stuff. But it's so what I discovered during my journey was that that it did have to do with an intention reaction. And so the trophy effect is a book about how does the mind perceive things to the degree that it's always storing, what we've done wrong versus what we've done great. That's what it does. And it does that in order to survive because it matches everything. And it's always on the lookout for what we're doing wrong or where we're not good enough. Because if we're not good enough, we're not going to survive. So, but unfortunately, the mind stores all these little pieces of proof that we're not good enough for future reference. And it's doing it in support of our survival. But who wants to just survive? We want to become masters. We want to be magicians. We want to be great. But the mind doesn't care about that. It wants you to survive. So anything we've ever done wrong, it stores in the memory bank of our mind. And it just doesn't store it as a memory. It actually stores it as a trophy. And if you want to understand more about that, you can read The Trophy Effect. It's just an amazing observation of what's really going on inside everybody's head. And once you understand that, you're able to step beyond it instead of beat yourself up and cause yourself, why do I always keep doing these same things? And why is it? Well, because the mind thinks it's wonderful, because it doesn't care if you succeed. It just wants you to survive.
Yes.
So in order to step beyond survival, you have to understand something called the trophy effect. So I wrote that book, and it's been out there for many, many, many years. And then my second book is Mastery, and it's the 12 distinctions of mastery. And it takes you through how to show up intentionally in each of those, within the realm of each of those 12 distinctions. So anyway.
Yeah, they're both great books. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. We have a minute or two. Does anyone have a question for Michael? Feel free to speak up.
I just heard that what he was saying about a compliment, like going through a grocery store and compliment something, that's the most powerful thing you can do for free in the whole world. So he's right on track from what I read. Thank you, Michael. That was excellent. Tom, you're always a class act. Thanks again. This is excellent.
I feel blessed to be amongst you all. Yeah, no, it is interesting just letting that, I mean, that kind of relates to the work that I do. I feel like I I know Victoria's in my current 12-week course that I'm teaching now. And really what I do every week is remind everyone in the group that your voice matters. You matter. You're focused on, focusing on an area. We all matter. And so it's sad perhaps that the world kind of beats that down. But as you said, there's a reason that happens unless we do something about it. But I agree with you, Gary, that to find somebody who maybe they haven't heard a kind word all day, you could be that kind word, right? So it's that's
just most everybody. I went to Publix this morning. I do most of my best work at Publix here in Florida, and they have a thing. They actually hire handicapped people to do the bagging and collecting the carts out of the. And so invariably when you're checking out, the person packing your stuff is going to be somebody that sells a little off. Smart enough to know what they're doing, but they're certainly got something going on. And so I just bought a couple of things, 3 or 4 things, very small in one bag. And usually they offer to take it out to the car for you because you need help to the car. Mm-hmm. And of course I just had one little bag. And so the little girl, she was so cute. And she looked at me and she goes, okay, have a good day. I go, aren't you going to offer to take it out to the car? Just one little bag. And she looked at me, she thought I was serious. She goes, well, okay, sir, I know you will. And I said, you are amazing. I've worked with you before. And I just gave her a big hug.
That's nice.
And I just caused her to feel special.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Why would I not?
Right. No, I love that. Great stuff. And reminds me, I wanted to invite one of my friends to speak for a moment. Victoria, as I said, Victoria's in one of my courses right now that I'm leading. And she spent many years there in the state of Nevada working with people with disabilities. And as Cynthia was talking about, that kind of discrimination or how there might be bullying or a toxic workplace. And then, Michael, as you're saying, we can all again, I've done a lot of work with a movie theater here in Connecticut called the Prospector Theater in a town called Ridgefield, Connecticut. And the lady who renovated this beautiful old historic theater, Valerie Jensen, her husband is kind of number two to Ray Dalio, who Tony's often talking about, Bridgewater and whatever. So they had some resources to renovate this building in a beautiful way. But the real purpose, it's a nonprofit, is to provide jobs for people with disabilities, often autism and Down syndrome, and from 18 to 65 and maybe older. And just that idea that I've made many friends working there on PR and whatnot. And it's like we all appreciate being appreciated, and just taking that extra moment and giving we appreciate it when people give us an opportunity to shine a little bit. And just I love how all the messages today really fit together. So thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it. And how can people follow up with you, sir?
Just I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I just post every single day, and that's the best way. So
Yeah.
Michael A. Nitty on Facebook. I mean, obviously on the website intentionquest.com, but I don't even go there much. I just go
Michael's posts on Facebook are great. So, and in Victoria, before you move along, would you like to comment on what we've been talking about today? I don't know if you stepped away. She might have stepped away. Okay, that's all right. Well, we'll circle back. But anyway, thank you, Michael.
Hey, Tom,
Yeah.
I just had a comment on Michael's archetypes.
Yeah, Brian, sure, go right ahead.
In our innovation work, we sometimes do training with the city of New York managers and comptrollers with the state of New York. So this is a tough audience to get to be innovative and creative, right? I mean, it just is. And one of the more effective techniques we've used with them is a role play. Sometimes we call great thinkers, but we'll ask them, to identify a hero. And by the way, you can help them with AI by generating profiles of these heroes. But to just, who's a hero you have, and then what would this hero say about this particular challenge? And it's a very powerful technique because people, give themselves permission to let the magician come in, if we want to use that archetype, and they get ideas that they didn't know they had, or by adopting these personas. One of the most powerful statements I ever heard from a senior manager who nobody particularly liked was, he said, in order to take my mask off, I had to put a mask on.
I love it.
And I thought that was such a profound comment, and I just wanted to share that with you guys.
That was beautiful. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Michael, as well. Appreciate it. So good. Hold on one second, guys. Let me switch to gallery view here. There we go. So I'm going to switch the schedule a little bit, but my dear friend Kirk Schneider is here, and I worked with Kirk on PR for one of his books years ago that reminded us about the importance of step away from screens. Here we are on screens. We're learning. It's good, but let's not spend all day there. Sometimes I can feel like I'm spending all day there. And Michael was talking about the primordial mind and so on, and all that brings, the inner critic and whatnot. But along with working on that book, Kirk was telling me, and this is going back a few years, about how we can bridge our differences. It's all, again, a little bit like Michael was talking about that incident on the morning of 9/11. It's like, well, this is my identity, this is my heritage, and so on. So aren't we meant to butt heads or escalate to a terrible level? But Kirk has really spent a lot of time focusing on how we can bridge those differences, and he's really brilliant. So Kirk, would you share with us?
Well, thanks for the rousing introduction, Tom.
Of course. Glad you could join us. Glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you can tell I'm very bad with introductions as far as degrees, and you certainly have quite prestigious degrees and resume, but in your books as well. So you can, if you want to mention a little bit about that to set the context, but we'd love to hear what you have to share with us today.
Well, thank you. Well, a lot of this I'm about to talk about draws from recent books, The Polarized Mind, The Depolarizing of America, and my recent book, Life Enhancing Anxiety, Counterintuitive, Key to a Sane World. Yes, I actually think we need more anxiety of a certain kind to deal with the major problems that we have. I think the fact that we're neglecting what I'd call the primal anxiety leads us to destructive anxiety, not being able to handle anxiety later on, and therefore becoming destructive. Um, but I'll just have to do this quickly. In recent years, I've been looking very closely at what is it that makes difficult conversations around religion, culture, politics uh, go downhill so quickly. I'm sure most of us have noticed this, have known this directly. I certainly have with friends, family, communities. And it strikes me that what happens are kind of three basic things. One is verbal flame throwing. So the conversations end up, just throwing verbal darts at each other, uh, being pissed off, being wanting to impose our views on the other, uh, tearing our hair out because the other doesn't see our point of view. Another reaction, I'm kind of riffing on Michael here too. And by the way, I'm also from Cleveland, Michael. So it's good to have that connection. But the difference between response and reaction, I think, is really important here. So another reaction, common reaction, is just simple avoidance. I'm sure most of us, maybe all of us here, have experienced that. Just a lot easier not to deal with the subject, but of course it's teeming underneath all the while. And a third is the most problematic, which is violence and destruction. We become violent, verbally violent or physically violent, all very quickly. This happens so quickly, and that is a really striking psychological phenomenon. Why is it that especially these days, conversations around religion, culture, politics uh, do devolve into these very primal reactions? What I've come around to is actually what some writers of classic horror, believe it or not, have come around to, and there's a good amount of psychological research to back them up as well. I'm going to give you a quote from H.P. Lovecraft, who's arguably the most critically acclaimed writer of classic horror, knows a lot about what scares us, what makes us reactive, but most critically acclaimed horror writer since Edgar Allan Poe. And Lovecraft writes in a book where he studied the horror, what scares us. He says, the oldest and strongest emotion of humankind is fear. And the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. Again, I heard Michael touching on this as well. I think we should really pause over that. These guys aren't just pulling rabbits out of the air. They know the terrain of human terror. And I think a psychoanalyst named Otto Rank really resonated with this notion, with his understanding of our basic terror, that's what gets activated in virtually all anxiety and trauma. And the way I translated drawing from Rank is it's a primal terror of the unknown. And the moment we emerge into the world, this is what we hit, right? We hit that we shift from relative non-being and unity with the mother, with the cosmos, to sudden abrupt being and pandemonium. The shock, the overwhelm of coming into such a different place, a different world, different beings, and being cut from the mother ship, so to speak, and cast adrift. I think Ronk is right on that this is probably the template for virtually all future anxiety and trauma, and possibly for future prejudices, bigotry. A terror of the unknown is very related to the terror of that which is different and other in terms of person, places, and things. Basically, we don't have the equipment at that point to deal with the unknown and to deal with that which is other and uncontained. So, but quickly on the heels of this terror of the unknown is what I would call a call to the unknown, elements of wonder. And I did have the privilege of presiding at the birth of my son, and really experienced this firsthand. And probably we all can sense it if we dig deep enough into our own past, our own emergence. But he was shocked and overwhelmed at first, and then a few moments later, he starts looking around, and the curiosity comes up, the openness. So I think the big question for us is, can we come into that wonder and that sense of discovery as opposed to terror and overwhelm? This is what I call life-enhancing anxiety. I define it philosophically as the capacity to live with and make the best of the depth and mystery of existence. To put it more concretely, the capacity to live on the edge of wonder and discovery, not just terror and overwhelm. And I think this is critical to helping us work with the kinds of political and cultural divisiveness that we have today, the extreme reactions that we have in these uncomfortable conversations about culture, race, religion, etc. They shake us to our roots. And unfortunately, in our culture, and many cultures like ours, we're not very good at giving people the equipment, the tools to handle that primal terror of the unknown and of that which is other. So that's what I've attempted to do with this bridge building dialogue format that is in these latest books, Depolarizing of America and Life Enhancing Anxiety, is to provide some tools that I have learned in my own experience, my own struggle with anxiety, as well as my experience as a clinician, as a therapist and researcher. Admittedly, these are belated tools. It's best if we can give young kids, newborns, tools to work with their anxiety, to be more present. That's a key term here. Present to oneself and the other. To be able to work with that primal terror rather than just react against it and erect defenses, which pump ourselves up and make us feel like we're holier than thou, or identify with some leader, social, religious leader who puts themselves out as holier than thou. It keeps us away from having to work with this primal terror of existence, of the unknown. Gives us a quick fix and an easy answer. And that's too rampant in our society, in my view. So I came up with a dialogue format I call the experiential democracy dialogue. I've been doing many webinars on this. And this is to help people who come from very contrasting cultural and political backgrounds to begin to see each other more as human beings rather than stereotypes and labels, rather than coming from that reactive mode, to begin to have some tools to respond to each other rather than just react. And we don't have time to go into that now. I can just say quickly that the ground rules are critical to this dialogue format, as they are to any bridge building dialogue. And we've learned that more and more through the history of conflict mediation. Can't really just jump right into these kind of conversations. You need some priming, you need preparation. And so what I do is I invite the participants, and this is a one-on-one format. It's rather intimate. There are a number of group formats out there, but I find the one-on-one very humanizing, at least has that potential. You probably know this. I mean, it's very different when you're coming from a group attitude or an ideology, as opposed to speaking from your center, your core, to another living, breathing person. So we begin with visualization before we even talk about the issue at hand. What was it like to grow up in the light of the issue at hand? With your parents, the culture you grew up in? And were there any formative incidents, critical incidents that shaped your view? So you're understanding more about the context, where people are coming from before you jump into the conversation. And then the listener reflects back what they heard, and the speaker gets to correct any gaps in what the listener heard. So part of the ground rules here, I failed to mention that, but the ground rules really are coming from a place of curiosity, openness, and respect to the degree you can. And if you don't respect the other's opinion, then that's understandable. We don't always respect the opinion. Just respect the fact that they're willing to be vulnerable with you and sit with you and work with you on this. Respect them as a human being, if you possibly can. And bringing your best self to the conversation, not interrupting, and also checking your nonverbals, the rolling of the eyes or the heavy sighs, so on. These are really important that we really teach people at the beginning before they enter into this. So anyway, the visualization has that part of just mindfully observing what's operating on you when you encounter this person, or just when you conceive of encountering this person. Thoughts, and especially feelings, body sensations, images that come up. And so that you have a sense of what's going on, what's operating on you, and not fixating on anyone. And then leaving a few moments to seeing if you can envision the other before you as a full human being with their own story and their own struggle, their own wounds. So that's just the first phase. Then there's a background phase, whereas I think I mentioned people talk about what it was like to grow up in terms of the issue, critical incidents. And then we get to the describing your stance in terms of the issue. And then there's a stereotypes exercise I don't have time to go into. Great exercise about identifying stereotypes against you, correcting false and misleading aspects of the stereotypes, and identifying nuggets of truth to the stereotypes. So again, you're showing your fuller humanity to the other. Then there's an ask a question from genuine curiosity to each other. And then finally, a discovery results phase. What did you learn about yourself, about the other, about the issue? And is there any potential for common ground? So I'll stop there. And that's a very, very lightning quick description of where I'm coming from.
No, I can certainly thank you so much, and I can certainly see the value. How can people learn how they can participate in this activity, this program?
Well, they can actually, I have a YouTube channel I work with a graduate student on. It's called the Core of Depth Healers, core like Peace Corps, Core of Depth Healers,
Mhm.
where we have samples of leaders in mainly in psychotherapy, but who have translated their work to addressing social crises. So we have many examples of experiential democracy dialogue on Trump, on racism. I did one recently on Zionism. We have a whole range of topics. That one's not yet loaded on the YouTube channel, but there's a lot there. We have Arnie Mindell and his world work. He does some great work, group work on these kind of bridge building dialogues. William Doherty, who's a co-founder of Braver Angels, which I was a part of. I was a trained moderator for them for a number of years. They're a grassroots movement that brings self-identified liberals and conservatives together for living room style dialogues. Number of examples. You can contact me through my website, which is kirkjschneider.com, and you can see examples of my work there. But as far as keeping up with what's going, yeah, I was going to say keeping up with like newer events. I'm also part of a group called the Existential Movement, and they're a very, I think, important group for today. A number of existential psychologists throughout the world have gotten together to apply their principles to social issues. So there would be, notices of events I'm involved with there as well. If you just Google my name and the Experiential Democracy Dialogue, you'll come up with a lot of material.
Okay, great. Well, it's just my sense that this is needed more now than ever. So
I have no question about that. That's
yeah.
And if we as healers, and I'm assuming most of you are healers in your own way here, if we can't hold the contrasts and contradictions of our lives and work with them, who can and who will? Who's going to do it? So
Right.
this is really our time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing. And Brian, I see that you raised a hand there.
Yeah, I might be a poster child for life enhancing anxiety. Facilitating ideation sessions. It's going into the unknown, right? And I've done over 1,000 of these, and you'd think after 1,000 of them I'd sleep well the night before, but I almost never ever sleep well the night before. It may be part of my uh, um, erroneous psychology, but it I find that for me to be 100% available the next day, which is what was required for great ideation work, and Kirk alluded to some of these features. There has to be prep for it, psychological preparation to be that empty, open Zen-like channel. But I guess the point I want to make to the group is that this is not that easy. I mean, as you all know, when you confront these and you kind of go with it, because on the other side, maybe to Michael's point, there's a love of ideas and creation and newness that gets past this fear of the unknown. And so maybe the all knowing, all beingness of love of something is what gets us through the unknown part of it. And my bias is that we often set ourselves up as soul to link the things we're most afraid of with those things we most love, because otherwise we wouldn't bother to go through it. And I'll stop there. But
Great point.
but I found that to be true.
Oh yeah, it's a great point about love too. I mean, if we can have that love early on, or at crucial points, and through certainly psychotherapy, especially depth psychotherapy, can help. I know it helped a lot in my life to contain, to hold this sense of groundlessness and helplessness that we so easily go to when we're sort of out of our zone. So yeah, underscoring love.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I don't know if this film since a film that came out maybe 10 years ago, something like that. I don't know if it's genuinely intellectual or pseudo intellectual, or maybe it doesn't really matter, but that science fiction film, Interstellar, with Matthew McConaughey,
Yeah.
where it's like the Earth is a mess set in the future, a dust bowl basically. And so he needs to go forth, and I guess we're moving in that direction with our spacecraft these days of, surpassing the limitations of time and the way we age and whatnot. But he really wants to get back to reconnect with his daughter, who ages the way we all still age. It's just, but the power of love is intertwined there. And I don't know if I really broke it down and analyzed what they were hoping we'd all believe. It's like I find some holes there, but I went with the concept and really loved that movie. So it was interesting what you're saying about being there at the birth of your son. Also, the trauma and that moment of separation. But I'd like to think that I personally love being curious. I love having all of you here with our diversity and so on. Love meeting new people in new professions. And I always tell my friends, you're all my friends. I'm a bright, shiny objects person. I have great curiosity. Sometimes that prevents me from getting things done, But I loved that story that you shared with us. That was really a great metaphor. So,
Well, thanks. And I think you're pointing to our need to attend more to our inner lives, not just the externals. We're really good at that in our culture, but the technical, not so great with
yeah.
the inner. Yeah.
Good point. Good point. Well, thank you all. And thanks, Brian, for raising that good point as always. Are there any other questions for Kirk? We have time. Or you can follow up with him on his website and learn about those programs. I think
Yeah, I have one, Tom.
Yeah, Jeffrey, sure.
The one thing I've noticed over the years, my dad always used to say that as things get better, they have to get worse first. And in my opinion now, going, at my age, I'm over 50 or whatever it is. Is I've noticed that that's part of the process of getting better, that things seem have to get worse before they get better, but it's becoming aware of what is not working right now. And that isn't that some of the, I think that's what you're saying is the fear of the unknown, anticipation, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, anticipation is a wonderful thing. That's what people get together for baseball. Otherwise, you just get watching two guys play catch. So that's all it really comes down to. But it's the anticipation of what could be, what is coming, and how it's going to look like. So my question is, do you think things are getting better generally overall as the human endeavor exceeds and improves?
Yeah, it's a really tough question because in some ways it looks like things are getting better. We are becoming more aware. And in other ways, it looks like we're reverting back to the safe and familiar, which may also be extremely destructive. When I say safe and familiar, I'm talking about maybe people over-identifying with, certain dogmas, certain absolute stands, and not being very open. But at the same time, I guess what I would say is that hopefully we're at an inflection point where the crises that are coming up now are kind of coming to the surface, is coming to a head. And hopefully we can navigate this, this kind of shoving people out of their comfort zones in a more open and humanizing way. Humanizing way. That's what these kinds of dialogue groups are about. That's a very hopeful trend, I think. There's a number of them in the country that are cropping up more and more. We're trying to spread a basic civility. That's really the issue. It's not so much getting everybody to agree. In fact, our whole system, the democratic republic system, is ideally all about coexisting with all kinds of differences. That's how we learn and grow and evolve. But the issue is, can we coexist with it in a more respectful way so that we can evolve
Mm,
and grow as a society?
yeah, no, good
So
point.
just being able to sit with one another without throwing darts is a major accomplishment, I think.
Yeah.
I hope we're moving toward, or we'll move toward soon.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Good question and good observation. So I think we could all benefit from getting involved in the programs you're talking about. Sounds really interesting. So thank you, Kirk. I really appreciate it. And great question, Jeff. Appreciate it. So good. Okay. Well, we're closing in on the home stretch, as they say, and we've been talking a lot about communication, and this is a perfect time to bring up our last speaker, she's a dear friend. We hadn't spoken in many years, and we reconnected recently. In fact, I got to see Vinu Keller in her billboard in Times Square. That was really cool, just a couple of weeks ago. But Vinu is very impressive communication expert. We've been talking a lot about communication. And also we talk about conflict in the workplace and on the political level and so on. But as a parent, as a dad, I spent some time I continue to spend time with my children now. My son is 23 and my daughter's 28. It's amazing how those years roll along. But we still find some disagreements and looking for ways to resolve conflict. And Vinu has had I guess the field work experience, shall we say, of being a mom in many different scenarios, and I've enjoyed learning about that. But she's just a great speaker, and like I might have mentioned earlier, I mentioned in the video this morning that talking about our summit here, that she recently shared the stage not only with Joseph McClendon III, who's spent a lot of time with Tony Robbins, of course. Michael, I'm sure you know Joseph, as well as the great Les Brown. So she's in great company. But thanks for being here, Vinu. We really appreciate it. It's great to see you.
Thank you. I'm excited to share this version. Like when we talk about conflict and resolution, of course, I'm a mom of 6 and my oldest is 30. So I have a 30-year-old, 25. My stepdaughters are 19, 16, and then I have almost 12-year-old twins. And I have 2 grandchildren that are one's 6 and one's 4 months old. So when I think about conflict and resolution, I think about the home. Because I think that it's in our home when we're born and we're nurtured by our family, whether it's your parents, aunt, uncle, grandparents, that's where we start to get that feel of language and communication and belonging. And am I enough? And is love conditioned or is it unconditioned? When we're little, we cry and all of our needs get met. And then we kind of grow up at about 2.5, where language becomes a thing. And we're realizing that they want me to speak. I can't just cry for what I want. And now all of a sudden conflict starts because your needs aren't getting met the way you thought they needed to be met, that your little brain can even understand how they're supposed to be met. And so when I look at the development of a child in the womb and the way that we're born, I've been taught that we're born on the wrong track, that we have greatness in us, and we live in 2 different types of orientations. We have our ego, and then we have our creator that's within us. And when we think about that, I think about how when we're in conflict, we're really within the ego. Something's not working for us, something's against us, or we have to blame other people and we don't know how to interpret it ourselves because it surely couldn't be our fault. It had to be somebody else's fault. And that's purely the ego. But when we're in our creator and we're able to see our own greatness and we act within our intuition that allows us to guide us to what we want, only then we have peace and resolution. And so when I dive into families, one of the unique things that I work with, it's for us to realize that our kids are not the mirror of what we needed to fix in our life or to make better in our life. And, I was born in the 70s, the early 70s. So I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. And it was a different time. I was a latchkey kid. I drank out of the hose. I was excited when there was a music video to the music because it kind of put like what the music was saying just by watching the video. I was the Brady Bunch kid. Like that was an ideal family. And then we grow up into this other world where we give our kids the world wide web, where their brains aren't developed to even understand the material that's coming into them. And yet we're wondering why they're communicating to us a certain way, why they're not saying, hey, mom, I'll be right back. It's, hey, mom, BRB. I'm like, BRB. And I watch them leave and I'm like, oh, you'll be right back. Like they're forgetting even how to communicate anymore with us. And there's different levels of communication that I love to work with families. And I think of myself as the person that's breaking the generational cycle between parenting and kids. It's allowing parents to see their own greatness so they're able to see the greatness in their own children. And what I realize is that when I solve conflict, because that's what I do, I literally go into homes, I live with them for 4 days to resolve conflict and show them a better way to live. Notice that I'm not saying to show them a right way to live because they were already living right. They were living right, which matched what they thought they needed to live. And the behavior shown the rewards for how they were living. And I come in there and I say, what if we saw your children as their own entity and their own being and their own greatness? What if we saw our children as not a reflection of who we are, but a reflection of the values and beliefs that were put in us to be a good kid and a good parent? And now we have to shape our kids to be that too. What if we took that mask off and said, what is the greatness inside of me? What is the gifts? When I tap into my creator, when I tap into my intuition, what does it lead me to? Get out of here, move through your heart and go to your gut and say, what is that gut instinct? Because honestly, that is our guiding force. It's the one that we don't listen to. I remember I was like driving my car and I was like parked at the store and it was nighttime. I live in a military town. I feel very safe here. And my gut instinct said, for some reason, I just don't feel safe. And I looked and saw what I needed. I'm like, you know what? I really don't need this today. So I'm just not going to stop. I get back home and a couple days later, I see something in our local Facebook page. And they said there was a guy at that Walmart that was stalking women and the police were called and they put a picture of the person. And I was like, so if that isn't certainty enough that our intuition will guide us to where we need to go, it's our ego that says, no, 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 play safe, play safe. And we tend to listen to our ego because it's sometimes louder than what we're seeing. And we hear this voice in our head that says, oh, no, 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 you're not as big as you think you are. Oh, no, 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 don't go after that person. They're going to say no. And then that old feeling of rejection, not good enough, starts showing up. So if we can learn to not be misled by our own voice and truly tap into who we are and what our greatness is, how could we reflect that into our children? How can we start to see our children? It doesn't matter what age. Like, I did not parent this way before. I promise you, if you look at my older boys, we're struggling with self-worth and self-esteem because I parented them through the baggage I carried before I had an opportunity to realize that these were all masked as protection. And I thought my kids needed that. I thought I had to give them what I didn't have. And in turn, I created a new mask for them. And so now and I see my son and how he's such a beautiful, amazing father to my grandkids. And yet I still see his insecurities. And I'm like, wow, it was absolutely a reflection of the way I parent him versus how I'm parenting my twins, who can say, I hear you, Mom, but are you hearing me? I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, I think I'm hearing you. And that's when it comes time to say, communication, as we've been speaking about today, communication is the key to connection. And we hear communication differently. Those of us that meditate or do breath work, we have a different communication going on with us when we're doing it versus when we're looking in the mirror and we have that other voice going on in us. Like, what's the communication we're giving ourselves? It first starts with self before we can replicate it and give it to our children in a way that's not good or bad. It's just an experience. And that's what we have to realize. There's no good or bad in this world. It's an experience we have to go through to learn what we needed to learn in that moment and then celebrate it. It's, I used to say, let's find the gift, find the gift. I've been a trainer for Tony Robbins for a year. And that's one of the things that, helped me see my own greatness is like, well, it's not trauma. I don't have trauma. I have an experience that happened to me that was an emotional response during that time that I allowed to stay on my back because I thought I needed it to protect me to go forward. Once I realized it was just an experience and it wasn't a gift, it was the wisdom I got from it. I could take that backpack off. I could stand tall, stand proud, and I no longer have it. I don't have to own it, and it does not identify me. So that is how I quiet that voice in my head that says, really, you? I mean, I go for things all the time. I'm like, oh, let's go after this, let's go after that. And you get like, oh, they haven't answered back. It doesn't affect me. I don't take it as bad. I don't take it as good. I just take it as not my opportunity right now. And there's something else that's coming. So it's like next, next, next. So how do we portray that to our kids? How do we get our kids to see their own greatness? Not greatness because of what they want from their peers, not greatness because of what our parents think their grandkids need to be. Getting away from judgment. I was listening to the end of Kirk talk, and he was saying about curiosity. And I was like smiling because one of my key things that I teach parents is be curious, not critical. When we are critical with our children, with our spouses, with anybody in our atmosphere, we lose the ability to influence them because they're so much more concentrated on how do they have to defend. One of the biggest things I get from families is, if you can get rid of that attitude, I would pay you anything. And I said, anything? You'll pay me anything? Because I'm going to get rid of it right now. They're like, no, 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 no. And I walk into this house and the mom says, okay, let's see. And she says, hey, Johnny, that's not where your backpack goes, honey. Where does it go? And he's like, I know. And she goes, okay, so you're going to get rid of that? I said, watch. I said, Johnny. He's like, yeah. And I said, I'm just curious. Does that backpack have a different place? And he looked down. He's like, I mean, yeah. And I said, is that the place it goes? No. I said, so where is its place? He's like, oh, yeah, it's right there. I just go hang it up. And I said, great. Can you show me how you do it? And he did it. And I said, And I looked at mom and I said, what's the next direction you have for him? She says, well, I need him to clean his room. Okay. I said, so Johnny, what do you think about your room? He's like, it's my space. I'm looking at his room. I'm like, it's definitely your space. And what would it feel like? Have you ever had your room where everything was put away? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, how did that feel? He's like, it felt freeing. I said, So if you wanted to have that freeing moment again, what would you need to do here? And he's like, well, I would just put that away, put the clothes away, da, 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 da. I said, great. How long do you think it would take you? Now, this kid's like 12 or 13. And he's like, I think I could do it in 20 minutes. And I said, I don't think you could. I said, looking at this, it'd probably take you an hour. He's like, really? And I said, really? And he's like, time me. And I'm like, okay. I timed him. That kid was done in 15 minutes. So I looked at mom and I said, so you're going to pay me anything, right? Because there was no attitude. And how did I do it? I got curious. There was no criticism. So he didn't have the need for defensiveness. Same thing with our spouses. I know with my husband, when I ask him to do something, he's like, yeah, I'm going to. I always call my husband. I'm like, you're the going to husband. What would have to happen for you to be the I've done it husband? And we just have fun with it. And because it's like, oh, I'm going to put the chickens in the big chicken coop I built. I mean, because you built that beautiful chicken coop. When are you going to put the little ones in? Oh, I'm going to. And I'm like, so what would have to happen to have the I've done it husband? And we just start laughing because there's no need for him to be defensive anymore. So it really comes with our tonality, the intention behind it, and being very clear in that communication. And the only other things that I know I'm running out of time is just remembering as a strategy, when we're curious and not critical, we're asking questions instead of presuming that we already know the answer. And that shifts everything in every conflict. And when there is conflict, even with my children, the one thing I do is first appreciate where they're coming from. Like, I appreciate you're upset right now because you don't want to do this. You rather go play. I can totally appreciate this. And here's what needs to happen. And then I share it with them. And all of a sudden, they don't feel blamed. They feel heard because I'm appreciating where they're coming from. And then I'm able to say, and if I have taken it, I also show my kids, I am human. I make mistakes. And that was the wrong tonality. And I appreciate that wasn't the right tonality. And that wasn't my intention. And so let me try again. Try that with your spouse. Try that with your older kids, your younger kids. Try that with your business people. And with appreciation and gratitude, things just get mended. And especially when we stay curious, not critical. I think he's trying. Yeah, there we go.
There you go. Vinu, thank you so much. No, I love that. I think I've been learning so much today, including from what you just shared with us, as far as and like you said, it doesn't matter how old those children are. I think by me being more curious instead of judgmental, and I think a lot of the mistakes I've made in life, or when things break down or we butt heads, is when I assume that everyone is like me, or we must think alike, and I need to, now that I've gotten a lot of awareness today, including from what you shared. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. So Brian, you have a question, sir?
Yeah, sorry I keep talking here, but two things. One, for Caltech, I'm an executive ed teacher for them, and our podcast is called Curious and Quirky. So, you got to be curious, but you also, when you're curious, you have to be willing to be kind of quirky. That's thought one. Thought two is the cover story this month from Harvard Business Review is the art of asking smarter questions. And it's real. I mean, I've done a lot of this kind of work because of my ideation stuff. The article is really quite good. Tom, I can send it to you. I'm probably violating copyright laws here, but I'm happy to send it to you because I
thank you.
did scan all the pages. So
Sounds
that's
great.
what I had to say. Yep.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
I love the curious and quirky. I love it.
Yeah, and we spell quirky Cuirky or something. We misspell it intentionally. So there you go.
Love it. It's funny. So any other questions for Vinu? And let everybody know how they can contact you,
Yeah, Victoria had her hand up.
Okay, yeah, Victoria.
I really want to thank you for your perspective and what you shared. And I'm sorry, guys, I was off video for a bit, but I heard everything. I'm 24/7 caregiving for my sweet husband. Many health challenge, 12 years-ish in the bed, and limited mobility with so many other conditions, but the dementia is number one. And whether your loved one, you hit the nail on the head. It's how a tone and how we share what we want to say. If we're not in the right headspace, step away and get there. For me, I just say a quick prayer. I calm myself, and then I approach with that kind heart and tenderness, because the last thing to do, whether it's your spouse, your siblings, your family member, a friend, is to shoot from the hip, and a lot of people that I've witnessed, and the reason I'm retired from a state employment without going into details of maybe hostile work environment, maybe the bullying thing is real. It's, we don't have to play in that playground and we don't have to go there. But I really appreciate, Tom, you putting this together, and you guys, your wisdom, when Tom says wisdom all around us, thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate it, Tom. Thank you.
great.
Victoria, I just wanted to mention also, my grandmother has dementia. My mom's her caregiver 24/7. She quit her law practice to take care of my grandma. And I've gone to some of these support groups, and, it's interesting because dementia, it's like brings them back to the childlike mind. And so it's treating them the same way and not arguing with them. And one of the things that cause I could see my mom's frustration. I asked my mom, I said, Mom, we don't know how much more time we have with grandma. What do you love about her? What could you just love about grandma right now? I mean, I know it's frustrating. I know it's demanding. I know she forgets. I know she blames just like a kid does because she doesn't know better. And that's where her mind is. But what could you love? And it's just reframing that for my mom. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you are with your husband, but I'm sure the frustration's there if you're a 24/7 caregiver. And so I just want to acknowledge the gift that you're giving your husband during this time. And, again, everything I talked about doesn't have to be just with a kid. It's just in our communication. So
Absolutely. And I'm blessed, we're going on 30 years of marriage, and I was a pampered princess. And now it's time for me to pamper the prince. And I do have caregiving made easier, the ABCs, and also Guardian Grace. And trying more. Social media is not my friend, but I'm trying to make him my friend and do more tips and tricks. But if I can help your mama in any way, reach
oh,
out
you're
to
so
me.
sweet, Victoria. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm here to serve, and I've worked in the field of assistive technology for people with disabilities going on 30 years, and I will be serving that community as well. But my heart is in for caregivers, especially newly caregivers thrown into the world of the unknown. So I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for Tom. Like, we've been in so many groups, and this is the forums he's putting together, and the master class that he's offering for free. It should never be for free, guys. So if you haven't attended, I highly recommend.
I did not pay. I
attending.
did not pay Victoria, by the way. No, thank
It's
I agree with that comment.
Y'all are very, very kind. Well, I like being someone who can bring lots of wisdom together. Like I said, maybe that's part of my bright, shiny objects personality or something, or mindset or something. But I'll put the link in there again if anybody wants to join me next week. There you go. But thank you, Victoria. I'm glad.
no problem. And it came to me, Tom. So you gotta post it to the group, because it just read in my ear that you
Oh, I
just sent
see.
that to me
Oh, I
only.
see.
So
You're right.
yeah.
Okay.
No worries. I'm legally blind, guys, so everything talks around me, and it just read to my ear that he posted in chat just to me, just in case you're wondering how I did that. But I just believe that the 12-week class that I'm finishing up, if and when he offers that again, it will bring your business and what you do and how you serve to a whole nother level.
Thank you. Thank you. I
so-
just love I've been told we have 6 students in the group, friends, I think of them, of course, including Victoria. And basically we're just saying your voice deserves to be heard. We each of us, I mean, on this call, exactly every one of us, our message deserves to be heard. It could help other people. So it's just a matter of getting out of, and a couple of our great speakers have talked about kind of dropping those preconceptions, whether, and Vino, you were talking about the ego and so on. And so I like how you just said, get out of the ego and into the curiosity, and it can be really a fun experience. So I love that. But thanks for sharing, Victoria. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for putting this together, Tom.
Yeah, thank you. And Vino, I forget if I asked how people can contact you and learn more.
Yeah, there was a couple more people. Do we have time to take?
Oh,
their
yeah,
questions?
sure. And well,
Jeffrey and Patsy.
I see that my friend Paul is here. So Paul, we'll circle back to you in a few minutes to close us out. But Patsy, yeah, we'd love to hear from you, Patsy. I'm glad you're here too.
Thank you so much. Hopefully you all can hear me. I've kind of have laryngitis. Everybody that has spoken today has really solidified all the work that I've been doing the past 13 years. And it solidified the fact that the journey that I'm on with my pillar program is my experience, it is my strength, and it is my hope that I can gift to others. All. I only saw this morning, and I really needed it because my husband was in conflict and I was going into conflict, and I'm like, I can't go there. So I love doing walking meditations. I love doing movement just to change what's going on. So I know that the universe, however you want to call it, I call it God, puts me right where I need to be. Um, so, what I'm also most grateful about is that I'm on the end of a 5-year concussion brain trauma where I'm learning how to re-speak, rethought, re-walk, re-talk, re-everything. And so sometimes it's overload. And my gift that you've all given me today is I'm retaining. And what a beautiful gift to have lost just about everything and regained it. And so in my empathy pillar, I sit with all of you. I feel all your energy in your share. And I so appreciate your authenticity and the gifts that you bring to everybody that you touch. And grateful that you've touched me. So thank you.
We're glad you're here. I've had numerous conversations with Patsy. In fact, when they were driving through Connecticut on their way back up to New Hampshire, I brought Daisy along. Hi, Daisy. So, and you didn't mind if we invaded your motorhome for a while, but no, you're wonderful and beautiful, and I really do believe, again, I don't know if it's a religious thought, I guess it's certainly a spiritual thought, is that we wouldn't feel that desire to touch other lives, to bring forth our wisdom. It's not out of ego. I mean, some people do it out of ego, but it's really, when it's the beautiful thing I think we're all experiencing right here today, it's not out of ego, it's out of that natural desire to share and connect and help and serve. And Vinu certainly emphasizes, embodies that so beautifully. So, but there are no coincidences, right, Patsy? I'm glad you're here with us today. It's really, really awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And let's see, and Jeffrey. Yeah, hi.
I enjoyed what you had to say, Vinu. Here's my feedback. This is what I heard, and I'm in relationship coaching, so I heard develop, extend your curiosity, kindness, have fun with it, validation, to be heard, and this is what I really like. Your strategy is permission of direction to have them refocus like you did with your husband. That's a nice strategy. I got to give you that.
It's worked, Jeffrey. It's worked. And it's literally elevated our relationship, because that was one of our issues that we've had. We've been together 13 years, and it was always like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And it's like, okay, a week later, when are you going to do it? And it would just create so much conflict because it's that expectation that wasn't being met. So we turned it into fun.
Yeah, and he never admitted he didn't have his direct, he didn't have the focus, he just couldn't. He needed some help on the focus.
100%.
He'd never admit that.
I love how what I get is that you're giving them space, as you said, that interaction with the boy who his mother said he never cleans his room. It's like you're giving space there. It's that's really amazing. It's beautiful. So great job.
So thank you all. I can be reached at vnuinspires.com. I put it in the chat as well. And I'm on all social media at vnuinspires. I have a podcast called Redefine Parenting, and that's really what it's about. It's like, how do we redefine the way we're parenting our kids? And so, and I have a lot of great guests on there too, that come on and share their wisdom. So
I was listening to one the other day. Vinu interviewed the legendary John Gray, who we all remember from Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And he had a lot of thoughts about parents and children in that conversation. And that was a really great interview, by the way. So
thank you. Thank you.
love
Thank
it.
you.
Love it. So
Thank you
great.
guys so much.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Vinu. And let me switch over to gallery view here. Okay, and to close us out, I want to bring on another dear friend of mine who I've known probably about like 15 years now, ever since I've been on the PR side of things after my news career. But my friend Paul Sladkus, who also comes out of television, and he does wonderful interviews. Years back, it was called Good News Broadcast. Now it's Good News Planet, because he's very committed to saving the planet. But also, one of the wonderful things that Paul does is a telecast of International Peace Day. So I couldn't have this program, so to speak, without inviting my dear friend Paul. So I'd love to hear what you'd like to share with us, Paul. Are you still on mute?
There you go. Sorry. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, everybody. There's a lot of wisdom here, and empathy and sincerity, and quite an honorable community here. And actually, I wouldn't actually expect anything different from Tom Martin. And so, who is a dear friend. I'm honored to have a moment to share the kinds of things we have been doing. We've been doing our Good News broadcast. It's actually still Good News broadcast on YouTube, where we have over 6,000 shows, and interviewed John Gray, I guess, is on our board. So lots of wonderful people doing wonderful things, including Tom. And so that has been a joy to share the good in the world after the CBS and PBS background career. And then in around 2002, we started an involvement with the International Day of Peace. As declared by the United Nations, 193 countries agreed to a day of peace. And our mission and my passion, or my insanity, I don't know what it is at this point, is that we're working towards pausing the world for peace, taking a moment of silence at 12 noon, as declared by the United Nations, 193 countries. And for all these years at 12 noon, we have a virtual commentary from Ringo Starr. We've been doing it in Central Park for many years, and I've taken Times Square over for the last 8 years, except for the COVID time. And we do a very large broadcast in Times Square. 5.5, 6 hour broadcast live to the world. Big project. We partnered with the city of New York this year, the Manhattan Borough President and Mayor Adams. And we will do that again. We just did also, so we have two major events. We did Earth Day, and we've been involved with environmental issues for a long time. I guess it helped start Nature series a long time ago on PBS. But and we helped create World Water Day in the United Nations. So environmental issues are very important to us. But when I saw this was a peace conversation, so that's April 22nd, when we take over Times Square as well. I thought about what I would share with regard to peace. And this is one of the only things I ever memorized in my life. And it got me into my fraternity, and also was the speech I used for my daughter's wedding. And that is, they've changed the name now. It used to be the Boy Scout code. Now it's Scouting America. But, growing up in little old Tarrytown up in Westchester, the Scouts were an important part of my life, just doing good things, learning about nature, actually. That was, I guess, my first involvement with nature, that opportunity. You sleep outside, so that's nature. So I would share the following words that I feel are very important for world peace, which are trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, clean, brave, and reverent. Did I say more? Trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Okay. And so I think if, these are good words, and the good, of course, words are words, but actions are actions. So I believe living a life that can encompass those words of humility and caring and kindness and loving, then you're probably doing okay. So thank you, Tom, for giving me a moment. I'm also an interfaith minister, Reverend Paul Slatkus, for all faiths and spirituality. I'm a practicing Jew from birth and maintaining that, and believe in all religions or no religion. I'm happy to do a ceremony for anybody as a gift to them in service. And so that's what I'm about. I'm in Manhattan, Upper West Side, and if I can help anybody, just please reach out. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. And I definitely encourage all of you to visit Good News Broadcast on YouTube to catch many of your interviews. You've interviewed some amazing people over the years. And I think last year I was working with a fellow, he was approaching his 99th birthday. I forget either he had his 99th or was approaching his 99th, but he not only had spent time working with Reverend Martin Luther King, but Reverend Martin Luther King's father. He'd been around quite a while, but Paul featured him at one of his events, and that was very, very generous of you. And it's like, again, conversation and the way we have to share and communicate with one another is really a treasure. And I think this 2 hours, it's amazing how 2 hours have flown by and so many great ideas. I know I'm going to be listening to this again. I'm recording it. I'm going to save the recording. I'll send it to all of you in case you want to listen again, but or share it with anyone. But I really appreciate all the time that you've shared with us today. 2 hours, time is precious, so that means a lot to me. And I will put in chat one last time the link if any of you are interested in joining me for an hour next week to talk about how you can get your message out. And I promise it's not a sales pitch. It's really a few ideas, because it moves from that kind of vague idea to here are some things that you can do. And one of them might be connecting with people like my wonderful friend Paul Slatkus, who does amazing interviews. And when and you really focus on making a difference in the world and on the planet. So very grateful. So I think on that note, I will say, are there other ways people can contact you, Paul, or through YouTube? Is that the best?
Not YouTube. Just call me, 917-687-1790. That's the best way. And if anybody can help us with our International Day of Peace, it's a big pressure on me, raising money to do a big concert, 5.5 hours with a big crew and a big stage. It's stressful. And somehow we've done it. I lost $10,000 last time, and I'm getting too old to lose money. So Social Security just does not cover it. So if anybody has any thoughts who people could benefit from going on the stage in Times Square and broadcast out to millions and millions of people in this high integrity event, we've created it. So now we got to succeed in the sense of more, what they say, almost 2 billion people are aware of the International Day of Peace. So it's well known, and we all sure know that taking a moment of pausing on Mother Earth for all the concerns could be a very healthy thing. So if you know anybody, 917-687-1790, who could be it's a nonprofit 501c3. I'd love you for it. And if something evolves out of it, you'll make a business consultant fee as well. So it's everybody should win. We're all trying to feed ourselves and friends and family. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Paul. And anyone can contact me, and I'll put you in touch with Paul or any of our speakers. So it's been a great time together, and I'm very, very grateful to all of you. And I guess since you mentioned his name, I'll close with the immortal words of Ringo Starr: "Peace and love." Right? Peace and love. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.